Hey, fellow content creators, Catherine Gillette here, creator of the Hero Method. And today we're going to take a look at a Microsoft PowerPoint presentation. It's a sales deck. And as always, I am not here to promote or criticize the solution or the company. We're just using this as an example, a real life example of how to illustrate the do's and don'ts of creating compelling content. So let's take a look and see what we see. Here it is. It's Microsoft's Cloud for Healthcare. And it is a very lengthy, you can't see the length of it, but it's a very, very lengthy presentation. So I'm not going to go through the whole thing with you. No worries. And what I'm going to do, because it's so lengthy and there's so much to say about this, just kind of scrolling through, you can see long and lots of stuff going on here. So lots to say about this. Lots of great stuff we can learn from this. This is going to be a great learning experience. Yeah, it's going to be a great learning experience. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it in two parts. The first part is I'm going to look at basically the content, like how are they presenting the information, how are they telling the story, which is basically they're not. And then I'll talk about the general layout. So I'm going to talk about the organization of the content, like how, what should come first, second, third, that kind of thing in terms of, that's part one. And part two, I'll talk more in detail about the actual, presentation of the material on the slides. That's what I'll do in part two. So the first one, this is a healthcare solution. So one of the things we have is the potential for a really great story, because this is about healthcare. And using the hero method, what we do with the story is we start with the wounded land. And that is what's broken, what's not working, and what are the common parlance is what are the pain points. I don't like to use those words, but what's wrong, what's broken, what's keeping folks up at night, what are they troubled about because your solution is not in their life. That's the wounded land. You start there, and then that's where they are stuck, right? And then the story of transformation is taking them to the healed land, which is now their problems are solved because they have your solution. In my parlance, in the hero method parlance, the elixir. You have the elixir, they have the elixir, and therefore their wounded land is healed. And so that's what I would recommend happening here. So let's see what they do. They start talking about the COVID-19 pandemic was a catalyst for change, creating a shift in business priorities across healthcare. 30% of U.S. frontline healthcare workers in the okay, well, first of all, we've got a typo, but that's not the most important thing right now. So they're talking about how there's a problem here because lots of healthcare workers are considering leaving the profession. And there's a shortage, and so this is a problem. So if we are talking about the wounded land, there's a way of talking about the wounded land here. So, okay. Healthcare consumers are making active decisions about their healthcare spending and experiences. Okay, so instead of the wounded land, what they're doing here is just talking about, here's the facts about the situation. Here's where we are. And here's, like coming back here, here's how the pandemic has changed things. And we're talking about facts. So one of the things that's very important to remember is that facts are absolutely not persuasive. Emotion is persuasive. Facts support the emotional decision that we make. So what's important is to start with a story here and then support it with the facts. So the story is, let's just say, let's see, what could it be? The healthcare world is in a state of upheaval as a result of COVID. And so there's a number of different things. There's like the top 3 things that might be the issues because COVID has had such an impact on healthcare. Do you know what I mean? Like one of them is, it's burned out healthcare workers. It has caused patients to want to have more remote care. They learn they don't actually have to come in to the office to see their doctor. Do you see what I'm saying? It's an upheaval. So these are the 3 things. So that's the wounded land. We're now in the world right now in healthcare is in upheaval because of what's happened because of COVID. Now we have, oh, yeah, I can relate to that. If you're the audience, so let's just say these are high-level decision makers looking to buy a very expensive product. But there's still, doesn't matter how techy your audience is. It doesn't matter how engineering your audience is still humans. And we all relate to story, and we all relate to connecting emotionally. We all relate to human interest. So that's really important to start with that. Then you go into the facts to support like what's going on that relate to your solution. So that's what I would recommend here, starting there, and then having the facts support that. So you've got to figure out 3 top things that are in upheaval about the healthcare world, and then dive into those. Then we talk about, so here we go. Let's just say here, I know it's a lot of information. We'll be talking about that in part 2. But what we're doing is here's like just say the top 3 aspects of your solution that address those top 3 issues that are in upheaval, right? So that's what I'm talking about, how we would do things, organize the content differently here. Initially, we're talking about the wounded land, which is the top 3 issues that are happening in the world as a result of COVID. Then here are the top 3 ways that our solution helps deal with this. And then you can talk about the customer stories that illustrate how the elixir has healed the wounded land, right? So they do have the, here's enhanced patient engagement. Let's just say that's, getting the patients engaged and easier to connect or whatever that means. Again, and very important to be speaking in human terms, not in technical terms. Even if the audience is IT folks, because it's very likely in that audience, for this presentation, is going to be IT folks. It's not dumbing the subject down. It's just making it easier to get what you're saying. It's easier to access. It's easier to just take it in. They don't have to even think about it. They're just absorbing the information, taking it in on a human level. So then we have, which is, I'm just saying, this is, they're talking about this particular aspect. We'll talk about this. So here is, for example, here is a customer story, right? So here's a customer story that could illustrate this particular aspect, this one aspect of the elixir that solves that problem. And here's a customer story that illustrates how the elixir has solved that particular problem. And here's the story of transformation. And actually, I'm going to talk in a separate video about, dive into these customer stories to basically turn this into a story of transformation. Instead of challenge, solution, benefits, there's a more persuasive way to tell these stories. So that's very quickly in a nutshell how I would reorganize this presentation. So you're starting from the beginning, the wounded land. Here we are, there's a healthcare issue. We've got the top 3 ways that the audience is really having a hard time. And the ways that the audience can really relate to, like, boy, yeah, they really understand me. They really get how this is a problem for me. And this is a problem for me. And this is a problem for me. Yeah, I get that. Then you go into how your elixir can address those issues, and then the customer stories about how the elixir, in fact, did heal their wounded land in these 3 different areas. So that is how I would recommend reorganizing this. Then Then later on, I would recommend you could do the, diving into the facts, because this would be more, I'll just show you, I'll just take you down here. These kinds of screens here. This is more, this would be more like for a Q&A part of the presentation. Do people really want to see this kind of detail? Well, they might. But in the initial presentation, get them emotionally engaged, then give them this information. You give them too much information, you're going to lose them, you're going to confuse them, you're going to overwhelm them, and if they're confused or overwhelmed, you've lost them. So this might be perfectly fine for kind of the Q&A section later on. You go, oh yeah, I've got a slide that addresses that question really well, so we can talk about that here. Right? This kind of thing here, this kind of stuff here, we can talk about that later on. So you tell the emotional-based human interest story first, then you talk about the facts that support it. That's the most persuasive combination. So that was my recommendations for this presentation in terms of the general flow of the content. In the second part of this, I'll dive more into the details of how to actually present the layouts of the slides, my comments on that. Hope it was helpful to you, and until next time, keep saying yes to the adventure.